Pigs can fly, fish can walk on land, or maybe hell has frozen over because I bought a street glide. Welcome to another episode of Riding and Wrenching. I am your host, Q the Rider. And in today's episode, I'm going to share with you all the details and all the good and bad about my 2022 Street Glide Special. If you've been following my channel for a while, you may have seen a time or two where I have bashed street glides and street glide owners, questioning their judgment, their intelligence, and their taste. But now here I am, I have joined the club. I own a street glide. I can't believe it myself. First thing I'm going to talk about is what other bikes that I look at. I did consider the BMW. I don't like the way the engine sticks out of the side on it. It weren't very comfortable. Honestly, my first choice was an Indian. I was going to get an Indian. I test rode one in Daytona. But the closest Indian dealer is 200 miles from me, and I don't want to deal with that. So I ended up back at Harley Davidson, and I decided to go with a Street Glide. Now, I also considered getting a Street Glide CVO. Love the bike. It's that blue steel, that dark blue color with the blacked out pipes. It's an amazing looking bike. But I wanted to do a lot of the customizations myself, and so that's what I'm going to do with this bike. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what I've learned in the 2,500 miles that I put on this bike. We'll talk about some of the things that I like, some of the things that I don't like, and also a couple of things that surprised me. So if you're looking for a street glide, maybe this video will help you out a little bit. All right, let's get into it. All right, so talking about some of the things that I like, number one on that list is this 114 motor. This thing is a beast. It's a little bit lighter than my road glide, and it's got a bigger engine, so it just feels so much faster. This bike is a blast to ride, absolutely love it. Another thing that I really like about it is the touchscreen. Now, on my road glide, I think my arm would have to be about a foot longer to use the touchscreen. In fact, after I started riding this bike, I realized that I never used the touchscreen on my road glide. I strictly use the thumb control just because it's easier. But on here, you can actually use the touchscreen, so, and that's a nice feature. Let's talk about a couple of things that I don't like. Number one on my list is this daggone seat. It's hard as a rock. I think it looks good on the bike, but there's just not much padding in it, and I like a soft seat. I'm not into the hard seats, not my thing. So this seat's gonna go. Next thing that I really dislike are the handlebars. I can't help but wonder how many pair of these stock Harley handlebars end up in a landfill. With as much money as Harley Davidson charges for these bikes, you'd think that you at least have a choice of a taller bar for taller riders, because it's just not comfortable. When I'm riding the bike, I have to kick my knee out like I'm some kind of a sport rider just to make a simple U-turn. Let's get back to something that I like, the tire pressure monitoring system. It's actually a pretty neat feature. It really works well. I've tested it, compared it to the gauge that I use to check my tire pressure. I like it. It's nice to be able to keep an eye on the only two things that are actually touching the ground when you're riding, and that's your tires. That's a great safety feature. And speaking of safety features, something I love about the bike is the RDRS. Didn't think that would be a big deal, but man, when you're riding and you come to a stop and maybe you're on a hill, all you do is you grab your front brake and you pull it firm. You'll feel a click, and then you let go, and the bike will hold itself in place on the hill. That's a useful feature. It's really nice. Something you have to be careful about, though, is to take off, because you have to release it. It will release automatically once you throttle the bike or if you press the brake again. But I actually stalled out once because of it, because it surprised me. All right, the short windshield. I've already replaced the windshield on my bike. This is a taller Clockworks windshield. The stock windshield is only, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches tall and exposed too much of my face. Didn't care much for that. Next thing that about this bike that I don't like is the lack of an inner fairing and this mustache, or whatever they call it, this chopped engine guard, because it really prevents you from adding a lower fairing. So I've already bought a larger or a larger engine guard, and we're also going to be adding, at some point in the future, I'll be adding lower fairing, because lower fairings make such a big difference when you ride long distance. Not having that air beat up your leg and protecting you from water and debris and anything on the road, it just makes for a much more comfortable ride. So that lower fairing, that's something that's got to happen. Now, I've talked about this in prior videos with the Street Glide, is that there is no freaking storage here on this on the inner fairing. There's nowhere to put anything. You have a tiny little cubby hole that's barely big enough to put a stick of chewing gum in there. It's, I don't know, they really need to do something to add some storage capacity on the inner fairing, because outside of that, all you got is your pockets, because there's just nowhere to put anything up here. Now, something else that I discovered that I like, since the fairing is so much closer to you, are the speakers. The speakers are also closer to you. This bike only has 2 speakers, but because they're closer to you, you can hear them a little bit better than you can on my Road Glide, where they're just a little bit farther away. Those couple of inches make a difference. All right, something else that I like, I also like the 19-inch rims on this bike. That being said, I'm going to take them off. What my plans are, I'm going to use these 19-inch rims on my Road Glide, and I'm going to put a set of 21-inch rims on this bike just to make it look a little bit sharper. My plan for this bike is primarily for short distance riding, and I'm going to use my Road Glide for my long distance riding, because the Road Glides are just a lot more comfortable on long distance rides, which takes me to the next thing that I've discovered I'm not crazy about with the Street Glide, and it's a phenomenon that I call the Street Glide wobble. Once you get over about 90 degrees, anything that happens to your front of your bars, dirty air from trucks or whatever, and you get a slight wobble in the handlebars. Now, truthfully, you shouldn't be going that fast, but if you happen to go that fast, the Street Glide just isn't as stable as a Road Glide. And that's probably why you don't see Street Glides or any kind of batwing fairing type bike on the bagger races. Or maybe there aren't, I just haven't seen them. But the Harley bikes are Road Glides, and I think the Indian uses the Challengers in those races. Now, the next thing I want to talk about are a couple of things that surprised me. The first thing is the cable clutch. I didn't think that I would like the cable clutch, or actually I just never ridden a bike with a cable clutch, that's the truth. I've gotten used to it. Now, the release point, or the friction zone, is a lot wider on this bike than my Road Glide, because the Street Glide, it releases a lot earlier and has just a wider friction zone, and it actually makes it a little bit easier for slow speed maneuvering. I'll become a lot more comfortable once I have a set of bars where I don't have to move my knees out of the way all the time. But I'm excited to learn how to ride this bike with the cable clutch. It's really no difference. It's just a matter of getting accustomed to going from a hydraulic clutch to a cable clutch. In fact, when I first bought the bike, I rode it for probably a week or 10 days before I hopped back on my Road Glide. And when I got back on the Road Glide, I stalled it out a couple of times because I just wasn't used to the clutch position on the Road Glide anymore. But now I can go back and forth between the bikes with no problem. When we replace the handlebars, I'm going to do a video on that. I'm going to go with a set of 14-inch bars. I would love to do KSTs because that's what I have on my Road Glide, but KST doesn't make the adjustable bars. So we're going to look at KSTs, fat baggers, and I don't know, maybe factory 47s or something, and try to figure out which bars are going to work best for me. But I'm going to do an install video on that, and while we have the handlebars off, I'm also going to add heated grips. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about is the audio system on here. While I was in Knoxville, Tennessee a couple of weeks ago, had an opportunity to talk to Volunteer Audio, and we're going to do an awesome video upgrading the sound system on this bike. But better than that, I'm going to show you how you can save money by installing it yourself, because that's what I do here on Riding and Wrenching. All right, so that's all I have. I just wanted to share with you my new bike. I'm going to have some awesome content coming out with this bike coming up in the future. I want to give a special thanks to the folks at Southern Thunder Harley Davidson. That's an awesome dealer right here near Memphis. If you ever happen to be coming through Memphis, make sure you stop by and see them. In fact, I'm going to do a special video just covering Southern Thunder. It's such an awesome dealership. All right, so this is Q. I'm riding, I'm wrenching, and I'm out.